guys, welcome back to The Bright Side. Macy here, the Bright Side Girl, and today we are doing my Galaxyathon reading wrap up. In case you somehow missed it, I will link all of the Galaxyathon videos down below in the description as well as up in the cards. Galaxyathon is my space sci-fi themed readathon that we did for March. I had a really great time and I read quite a few things, so I'm excited to talk to you about them today. So this is technically going to be part 1 of my March reading wrap up. Part 2 will be all the things I read after Galaxyathon that were not space related. I like to split them up because I read so much during the readathons. I'm sorry this video is a little bit delayed. I'm a little behind on posting things, but we're getting caught back up. So for now, we're just going to talk about all the things I read for Galaxyathon. Don't forget to check out the reading vlogs as well, where I talk about all of these books. Both of them should be up. Again, they'll be linked in the description. It was kind of a wild ride. We did some fun space-themed activities, and overall, it was just a really good time. I think we're going to go in order of least favorite to favorite. That is the new thing that I have been doing. So lowest star rating to the highest star rating to kind of build on up. We're going to start with all these graphic novels first and then go into the star ratings, because while I did give them star ratings, I'm not really sure where to put them all because they're all so different in different age categories. Read Sentient by Jeff Lemire. I think this is an adult graphic novel. I'm not sure. This one I wish was like a series, and I believe this is a standalone. I enjoyed it, but I wish there was more. So we're on this like sentient spaceship that like takes care of the crew, and then a tragedy happens and all the adults on board die, and the kids wind up having to like control the ship and take over, and they're all like, I think like 12 and under with the sentient spaceship. It's very fast paced. It's kind of dark and gory. I did like it, but I wish that there was more to it. I wanted more from the crew and the ship and the kids. I don't know what I gave this one. Maybe like a 3.5. We have Sea of Stars. I believe this is a YA graphic novel. This is by Jason Aaron. In this one, we have a young boy and his dad, and the mother has like recently died, and he has to like follow his dad as his dad goes to these different like planets and things to pick up artifacts and like sell them. He's kind of like a thrift dealer, which was really cool. So he's got this spaceship full of different artifacts that he's gonna take somewhere and like sell them so that people can like resell them and things like that. Him and his dad are like on this journey. His dad's considered like a trucker, and then they wind up getting separated, and basically you're following the kid and seeing if he survives and how he does. This is very cool though, because the world has like these sea creatures that are in space. So there's like whales and sharks and things, and they're in space. So that's why it's called Sea of Stars. I really like this one. This one's newer, at least one more out that I can read. So I want to get to that sometime soon. And I wound up giving this one 4 stars. Sorry about my ring light, by the way. Doing my best. Then I read Space Trash, which was very fun. This book is really large, and I'm not sure why. So this one is set in the future in space, and we've got this like kind of grungy ragtag team of girls, and they're like going to school. The school's taught by a robot. They're kind of like punk and rebellious, and they wind up teaming up with some other girls and deciding to do this like crazy mission. I really liked the art in this one, but there's also like not a lot that happens. Like some pages don't have any dialogue at all, and it's not until like the very end that you like really figure out the plot. So this one is newer as well. I think the second volume is out, or it might be coming out soon. I probably will read it. It's just very fun. If you like graphic novels, you'll like this one. If you're new to graphic novels, I wouldn't recommend it because it doesn't really suck you in that much. Probably like a 3.5. Then I got to Cleopatra in Space. This is book 1, Target Practice. I think this one's middle grade. I think Space Trash was YA. This is either middle grade or YA. This is just really, really, really cute and fun. So this one is set when a young Cleopatra finds a mysterious tablet that zaps her into space, and she goes into space, and she winds up having to go to school there and complete these like certain missions that she's destined to do. It's very fun. It's got a lot of Egyptian qualities to it, but also sci-fi. This is like a full series, and I have the other books requested out because I thought this was so cute and really, really fun. So I think I gave this one 4 stars. And then lastly, my favorite one was Star Knights. Again, this is either middle grade or YA. This is so cute and so magical. So in this world, you have these creatures that become these Star Knights that like fight and like save the realms. So there's like frogs and things, and they have the ability to turn into these Star Knights, which like turn them into like humans, and then something happens that stops the Star Knights, and we're living in a world without them now. This is a really bad description, but there's like a cute little witch in here, and it just, the characters are so fun and so lovable, and the art style is just really, really cool. Super magical, super fun, spacey, star-esque. I really, really enjoyed it. So this one is a 5-star. I think my least favorite was The Last Girl on Earth. This is a short YA spacey novel. I thought it was going to be more similar to The Loneliest Girl in the Universe, which is very cool. The girl is on a spaceship by herself. Her parents have died. She has to complete this mission. It's got this very ominous, lonely, scary feeling about it. It was really fun. This one is more about there being only one human left on Earth, and basically there's like an alien that comes in and kind of sympathizes with her as they're killing all the other humans and rescues her, and she has to grow up with the aliens and pretend to be an alien. I just felt there was like very little world building, and it was more about her like growing up and falling in love than it was about like the aliens and the situation that she was in. She naturally looked like the aliens, like the only difference was that they had gills. I don't know, I thought it was kind of silly. It wasn't a bad book, it just left me feeling kind of like, what was the point? So I only gave this one, I think, like 2.5 stars. Unfortunately. The narrator for this one was decent, but not my favorite. Okay, next least favorite was probably In the Quick by Kate Hope Day. I did this one via audio as well. The narrator for this one was pretty good. So in this one, it has a lot going on. It's supposed to be a loose retelling of Jane Eyre. The Jane Eyre portion did not come in until like the last like 70 pages probably of the book. And I hate when retellings do that because it doesn't feel like a retelling and it feels kind of like shoved in there to like meet the requirements versus like naturally what would happen. And this book is just very like disjointed. So we're following our main character. Her uncle is like a famous astronaut and he developed these like fuel cells to fuel this ship, and him and his crew like go on this journey and they wind up getting like lost, and she like sees this as a young kid and she's like very intelligent. She gets sent into like a space program and she basically is very, very young and having to do all of these like space training things with a bunch of older people. That's like the first half of the book, and then the second half of the book is set like 12 years later in the future and you're following her along. It just didn't really feel like it flowed together. It felt like 2 or 3 separate books in it. And while I did enjoy the Jane Eyre retelling portions, it just didn't feel like it all went together. So I gave this one 2.5 stars, which is unfortunate because I love a pink cover. We're gonna squeeze this one in here, not because I disliked it, but just because this was a kid's book and I thought it was more of a graphic novel. I guess it could be considered a kid's graphic novel. Not a bad book. It's very cute. It's probably more like a 4-star for kids, but it's Astrid and Stella. It's just like the cosmic adventures of these silly little characters. So it's really cute. It's probably more like a middle grade graphic novel. A little bit younger than what I was wanting, but it was still really fun. So if you need something fun for your kiddos, I recommend this one. Next up is going to be Want by Cindy Pon. I gave this one 3 stars, but again, it was probably more like a 2.5 for me personally. First up, this is not a space galaxy book. That was my fault. I thought because of the way that the helmet is on the cover that it was going to be spacey, and it is not. It is sci-fi and it is set in like future Taiwan where the wealthy are like polluting the world around us. They have these like fancy helmets and things that they can live in to like be healthy and safe, and all the poor and lower class people don't have this, so they wind up dying younger and getting diseased and things. And our main character wants to like put a stop to this and fight the government, and he like kidnaps one of the wealthy people. I liked the concept for the most part. I read a ton of like dystopian style reads though. Just felt like this one didn't really stand out. One, I was in the mood for Galaxy book. That might have hampered my enjoyment, but also it felt kind of cliche. We're following a male protagonist in here, and one thing I really didn't like that was very strange is that he kept talking about all of the girls' boobs. And it was so weird. I talk about this in my reading vlog. Literally he'd be like, and her boobs were like tight in her outfit, and her boobs like pressed up against me when she hugged me. And it was so strange because this is written by a female author. This isn't a spicy book in any way either, so it didn't have to do with that. And I think he was kind of trying to describe how ridiculously the wealthy were dressed, but it was just so repetitive and very, very odd. That part I didn't enjoy. I didn't really love the main character either. I did like the little love story. I thought that was okay, but overall this was just an okay read for me, and I gave it around a 3-star. All right, next 3-star was Ice Planet Barbarians. So probably one of the last books you ever expected to see me read. I like to, with the reading vlogs, pick things that would be fun to see me like read or listen to. This one was a very short 6-hour audio. I heard it was good narrator. I heard it was super fun. This is adult, smutty, spicy romance about blue aliens, and that was all I knew. And I heard it was like really fun and silly, so I was kind of game for that, even though I don't really love like super spicy books. In this one, basically a bunch of human girls are like captured by an alien species and like taken to be like slaves, and then they escape and they wind up running into like these other aliens that are like kind of very, very tiny bit of an Avatar vibe about it. This one has some trigger warnings in the beginning. Actually some rape right in the beginning, which I was not expecting for this like fun, silly type of read. So just a warning, not very like descriptive or anything, and it didn't really bother me the way that it was written, but I was just very surprised because it's just kind of a silly read. I did enjoy this one more than I have other like spicy and smutty books that I have read. It was very fun and silly. And in fact, if it had like half of the smut in it, I would probably continue on with the series. But this is like a 21 book series, so that's a big commitment. I gave this a 3-star. I thought it was enjoyable. If you like spicy, smutty books, I would highly recommend this one to you. You'll probably enjoy it way more than I did. Characters are fun and funny and lovable, and there's a cool adventure and romance in here. So 3 stars. All right, next I had quite a few 4 stars, like more than I realized like while I was reading, because I felt like I was reading some things that were just okay, but I actually read quite a few things that I enjoyed. So we're gonna dive into these in no particular order. So I read Arch Conspirator by Veronica Roth. This is a short novella. I read this because it was a really short little 3-hour audio. This is a retelling of Antigone. In the video I say Antigone just because my brain read the word, but it's a retelling of Antigone, which I am not super familiar with. Set in the future, set in space, got a dystopian sci-fi vibe about it. We're basically in this world where like women are protective because they're seen as just like vessels to birth children, so they're like extra protected and they're supposed to like continue the lines of the family, and we can also like take genes from other people or from like our past loved ones and insert them into the new generation. And then our main character, her and her brothers were born I think like naturally, and they didn't have these like genes, and so they're considered like lesser and they're not wanted to like continue on the line. There's also like this archive where we store like the essence of our loved ones for future use. It was very good. I wish it was a full-length thing because the narrators for this one are absolutely amazing. They were so good. They sucked you in. The story was really intriguing and intense, and it was just a short novella. So this is a 4-star for me. I really enjoyed it and I'd highly recommend. It just leaves you wanting a little bit more though because it was just so good. It makes me excited to read Veronica's other things because I've only read Divergent from her, but I have a couple of her other books. So hopefully I can dive into them this year. Okay, next I want to talk about Feed. This one I have very mixed feelings about. I gave it 4 stars for several reasons. So this one I read in 2017 and I DNF'd it. I was physically reading it because the characters are so unlikable and I didn't really understand that was kind of the point of this book. So this is set way in the future where we have these actual feeds, basically like what we see on our phone, but it's inserted into our brain. We can like communicate to each other silently through the brain. You're getting advertisements and things all through the brain and through like an algorithm. This book is really ahead of its time because it was in like 2002. You've got these obnoxious teens that are like really into this. They want to take this trip to Mars and they wind up meeting this girl that's kind of different than them and kind of makes them think differently, and then things just go crazy from there when the incident happens with the feed. So I don't want to say too much more to give it away. Amazing things about this book. This is one of the best audios I've ever listened to. The narrator was so good, but also it had like a full cinematic experience, which is what I really love. So in this one, like when you're like walking by a store, you will get an advertisement through the feed and it'll be like, on sale now, socks, $6.99, stop on by. And then you'll walk through the next store and it'll be like, come on in and see our giant TV screen. It's in their brain, in this feed. You're also getting pushed things based on advertisements. Corporations that make things own the school, so everything is based around like selling. And what I really loved about the audio is that you actually felt like you had the feed in your brain. They would use different voices and jingles and really change things up so that you actually felt like you were getting the feed. It was kind of disorienting and annoying, but good at the same time because that's how the characters were feeling. Very distracting and intense. So when the characters would talk to each other via the feed and instead of vocally, they would change the tone and make it sound kind of tinny and lower so that you knew that they were talking through the feed. And it was just very cool. You got little advertisements in between the chapters from like the president talking about what was happening in the nation, and then like a kitty litter jingle, and it was just really cool. I really liked it. It has a lot going on. The part was totally awesome. The story is very intense, very brutal. There's like a little romance in here, sort of. I didn't particularly love the ending. I knew that it was going to be kind of hard to read and intense, but I also wanted just a little bit more from it to kind of further the point that we probably need to set down our phones a little bit. This is fairly intense towards the end, so not for the faint of hearted, but I gave it 4 stars for like the overall message and also just because the audio is absolutely incredible. Next up, we have How Rory Thorne Destroyed the Multiverse by Kay Eason. This is a YA duology. This is pitched as like Princess Leia meets like Princess Bride, pretty loosely in my opinion, but we have our main princess Rory, and she is blessed with 13 fairy blessings at birth. So it kind of had like a little bit of a Sleeping Beauty Aurora vibe to it. And then the 13th fairy blessing was, I curse you, Rory Thorne, to find no comfort in illusion or platitude, and to know truth when you hear it, no matter how well concealed by flattery or custom. And they said that is how Rory Thorne became the woman to destroy the multiverse. Basically, she has to like find a husband in here, and she's just like really smart and witty. This is a little bit more high fantasy, high sci-fi than some of the other reads, and more than I was expecting. The book is very cool too. Had a lot to do with like royalty and politics, and it was very, very cool. So this was a 4-star read for me, and I would definitely recommend it for next year. If you're brand new to sci-fi, I probably wouldn't start this one, but it's not super hard to follow because it's still YA, but it definitely has a little bit more of like political intrigue, kind of what I call a sci-fantasy, where it's sci-fi but it's also got those fantasy royalty elements as well. So I really enjoyed this one. Next, we have Rogue Princess by B.R. Myers. This was our group read for Galaxyathon. This is a loose, gender-bent Cinderella retelling. Extremely loose. This is another one where the retelling doesn't really happen until the end, and it's just kind of barely there. In this one, you're following a princess. Again, she kind of has to choose a man to marry, and she winds up becoming kind of like a runaway princess, and she winds up like stealing a spaceship and running away, and runs into like a handsome stowaway on board. In my opinion, this almost had like an Aladdin style vibe to it, and I really enjoyed this one. The characters were very fun. I really liked Delia's sister, which I love when I love a side character that much. I actually really enjoyed the little romance. I loved the little twist at the end. I thought it was very fun. It's definitely silly and doesn't fully explain the sci-fi fantasy elements, but it's just a short YA read. And if you're up for like a good time and a fun ride, like this was very enjoyable. Again, a little bit of that sci-fantasy element where we've got some royalty, we've got to choose a prince to marry, but definitely got the sci-fi elements in here as well. I wouldn't say this one's super spacey, even though it has that setting. It's got more of a sci-fi vibe than like a space galaxy vibe about it. But there's some cool stuff about the myth of the princess's hair and what the hair means and why they have these braids, and it's got a little bit of like made up mythology, which is very, very cool. So overall, I thought this was fun, and I gave it 4 stars. The narrator was good as well, like not my favorite, but I enjoyed it. Then I read Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, the first edition. This is a full bind up of all of them. So written in the 1970s, this was narrated by Stephen Fry, who was incredible. I heard the next ones are narrated by Martin Short, which makes me even more excited to read them, because if you're familiar with the movie, Martin Short is in the movie, and it's so fun. I super enjoyed this. The movie followed the book a lot more than I was expecting. I watched the movie years and years ago, and I thought that it would just kind of take the concept of this wild, wacky, fun alien adventure, but it actually follows it fairly closely, which I thought was kind of fun. And listening to Stephen Fry narrate it kind of just put me back in the feels of the movie. It's super weird, it's super wacky. Aliens come to Earth and they're like, sorry humans, you don't deserve to live anymore, we're gonna kill you, haha. And then one of them winds up like going with the aliens. He's like kind of trying to stop it happening, but he's just kind of like a normal guy, and he gets kind of caught up in all of the craziness, and it's super, super weird. The aliens are very strange, the planets are strange, the things that happen are really weird, but it's just a wild, fun adventure, and I really enjoyed it. So I gave it like 4.5 stars, and I probably will read the rest sometime soon. I'm glad I finally got to this one. As far as like being from the 70s, being almost 50 years old, this really holds up well for the style of read that it is, and you can see the inspiration that a lot of the reads that I enjoyed, like Space Opera and another one I'll talk about a little later, got inspiration from this. Definitely super weird, quirky, and wild, but if you're up for a fun adventure, highly recommend. 4 stars. Okay, then I physically read The Prom Goer's Interstellar Excursion by Chris McCoy. So this is a YA standalone that is very fun. This again has Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy type vibes. This is set in New Mexico, and our male protagonist has like a crush on this girl in high school. He's supposed to be hearing back about getting into Princeton, but things aren't working out for him, and he finally meets up with this girl from high school. He winds up driving her more into the desert to help her like fix her car, and she gets abducted by aliens, and he has to try and figure out how to save her and teams up with some other aliens and goes on a journey in space, and it is so fun. It's so fun. It's so silly. It's a very young, like fun, wild ride. It definitely has Hitchhiker's Guides with the crazy aliens. There's like aliens that are a band that play music in space. We've got prom in here, and it was just really, really fun and silly. But I so enjoyed this, so I gave this one 4 stars. I want to talk about Memento next, even though I gave this 5 stars, obviously. This was a reread for me. So this is a novella prequel to the Illuminae Files, which is one of my all-time favorite trilogies, all-time favorite Galaxy type trilogies by J. Kristoff and Amy Kaufman, and this is the novella prequel that came out as a pre-order incentive for Aurora Rising, which is their next series coming out that I got. And I never pre-order things, but I had to have this. And so it's done in the cool format that Illuminae is done. And I read this as soon as I got it when it came in the mail. So excited. It's so cute. But the audio came out somewhat recently, like within the last year or two, and I had never done it. It's the full cast that does the original trilogy, and I particularly love the main character in here, so I did this one just to get another short read in, so it was only like a half hour, 40-minute length audiobook. Obviously 5 stars. Anything Illuminae Files is 5 stars for me. Absolutely loved it. So good, brutal, dark, fun. I do recommend reading at least the first book in the trilogy before reading this, even though it's technically a prequel. I feel like it kind of spoils something that happens in the first book, but love it. And I got the audiobook from my local library, so that was great. Next, I read Burning Midnight, and I'm still on the fence about giving this 5 stars or not. So I physically read this one, and I was not sure if this worked for Galaxyathon or not, and I cannot confirm with you whether it's a Galaxy book or not because it's kind of a spoiler. In this one, there are these colorful spheres that have shown up on Earth, and nobody knows why. They've shown up like all over Earth. They're different colors, and people found out that if they take 2 of the spheres and put them to their temples, it will give them some kind of an ability. Anything from like being able to run faster to enhanced singing abilities, higher intelligence, and they're all worth different values. In fact, on the back it has what some of them are like worth. So teal is a rarity 1 and is worth $60, and you can fall asleep easier. I need me some teal. And then slate gray is a rarity 2. It's $130, enhanced singing ability. And then we have like mustard, which is a rarity 9 worth $2.5 million, and you get higher intelligence. And so we've just kind of accepted this, and there are groups of people that are like against this, and they think this is like bad for us and something's gonna happen, but nothing bad has happened so far. And our main character is a kind of like an antique, like thrift type dealer of the spheres. And so he works at like a flea market, sells spheres as he can like find them, or people bring them to him to sell. And one day this like cool quirky girl comes up, and she has a somewhat rare sphere that she wants to sell him, and they wind up teaming up and hunting for spheres together. I absolutely love, this is a new trope I'm finding about myself, random objects or things appearing on Earth and us having to figure out why they're there, whether they're good, whether they're bad, whether they're from aliens, whether they're not, what's happening. I love it so much. So we have that in this one. We have that in An Absolutely Remarkable Thing. There's like these robots that appear. We have that in Sleeping Giants, where there's like these metal hands and things that appear. If you know of any more books that have this trope, calling it a trope now, please let me know. It's my favorite thing ever. So this was so fun. This is a YA standalone. I wish it was a full series. We could go so in depth with all these different spheres. There's a little romance in here that is so sweet, and the ending gets absolutely wild with things that happen. It's a little bit slow at first, but I was so into like the spheres and learning more about them in the world that I didn't mind it. We learn a little bit about the background of the characters and things. The ending, when you find out more about the spheres and what's happening with them, it is so crazy and so fun. Very young adult, very wacky at times. Not wacky in the way of like Hitchhiker's Guide, but just kind of like, I don't know, it gets kind of crazy towards the end. Absolutely love this. I'm debating on changing my rating to 5 stars because I literally want to like read this again already. It was just so much fun, and things happened that I didn't expect. And this was another random Dollar Tree find. Dollar Tree for the win. Loved it. And then my last read, and the only technical 5-star, and my favorite of the readathon, was The Humans by Matt Haig. So I read this, one, because I haven't read a Matt Haig before, and two, because this is about an alien that comes to Earth and inhabits the body of a human. And basically this human has like discovered some mathematical scientific equations that I think are going to prove like aliens exist or prove major things about the universe, and he wants to stop that because the aliens don't want that to happen. So he has to come down, take over his body, like kill him, and like clean up the mess of whoever he's told about this like discovery. And while he's doing that, he learns to become human and learns about like the guy's family and his wife and his situation, and it's very silly. He literally walks around naked in the beginning and he doesn't understand why everyone's freaking out. Then he has to kind of cover up and explain why he did that because he doesn't know anything about being human. And this was just so sweet and lovely and thoughtful and fun and heartwarming, and it makes you feel good about like humanity and being a human and whether it's worth it or not to be on this earth. And it was just so sweet, but it was also like really funny and charming. It reminds me of the show Resident Alien, which came out a couple years ago on Sci-Fi, and it's also about an alien coming to Earth and kind of taking over a human's body and learning to be human. I love that. And it's just really, really like cute and silly, the situations that happen, but also just really sweet. I just really loved it. So I'm really excited to read more from Matt Haig now because I haven't read anything else from him. I have The Midnight Library. I have this other book on audio through the library that's like about a vampire family living in the suburbs that I'm very excited to get to. Like I'm debating on doing it this spring because that sounds really cool. But I love these like thoughtful, like what it means to be human and whether it's worth being human type books. So it was really good. This was 5 stars for me. The narrator was so good. He was amazing. And I just really, really enjoyed it. Nothing like fast-paced or intense, but it was just a really sweet read. And this one's set on Earth the whole time. So it does have an alien. It has a little bit more of a contemporary vibe about it. So I just really, really loved it. So that is everything that I read for Galaxyathon. It was, I think, 19 books in total. I read 21 last year, so this came very close to last year. I didn't enjoy quite as many this year as I did last year, but I still had a great time, and I got some things off my list that have been on there for a while. Let me know if any of these intrigue you down below in the comments, or if you've read any of them. I'd love to chat about them. Big thank you to everyone who participated in Galaxyathon. We had such a good time. I loved seeing everyone's photos and doing the giveaway, and all of that stuff was such a blast. The next readathon is going to be HIKEATHON, which is going to be running May 15th, I think through the 29th. I think originally I said the 28th. We're going to change it through the 29th since that's Memorial Day, so it'll give us an extra day. That's going to be all themed around like nature, springtime, survival, fitness, all that kind of stuff. It's really fun. More details will come out in just a couple weeks, so stay tuned for that. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram at @TheBrightSideGirl for more bookish and non-bookish content, and hit subscribe if you haven't already. And I'll see you guys next time on The Bright Side.